Your fantasy football draft is right around the corner, and now is the time to figure out who you should be prioritizing. You know, the fellas that will help you dominate your buddies this year. Well, lucky for you, I've already found them. Here are the top 10 must-have players you need on your team in 2023. And let's start this off with James Cook, the Bills running back, who right now in camp is looking like the RB1. And now Cook currently goes off the board in round 7 or 8 of fantasy drafts as the running back 30. He has major upside here. Because as you can see right here from some stuff going on in camp recently, this says here, the quote, James Cook has been the mainstay on the Bills' first team offense through the first 4 days or week or so of camp. Basically, it means he's taking the majority of the snaps as the RB1. And that can also be seen here by this second bullet point from Underdog Fantasy on the Bills training camp news. Damien Harris is taking RB2 reps over Latavius Murray behind James Cook. The behind James Cook is the important part. So what this is going to lead to for Cook is just more playing time and more opportunities. And here's a final quote from Chris Brown on this. James is going to be in the flow of the game a lot more. And then in parentheses, the big one, more snaps. And now here's what you need to know about Cook. Last year, this fellow was fantastic when he saw touches. He was number 2 on the ground as a rusher amongst all running backs. And when you factor in his receiving game, his yards per touch, 3rd most in the NFL. Only Breece Hall and DeAndre Swift had more yards per touch. And Cook led all backs in breakaway run rate. And what does this mean? Well, it means he's extremely explosive. And now he's starting in a top 5 offense in the league. And his main competition isn't anything crazy. Like Damien Harris is a solid runner on the ground, but nothing elite, and he has no passing game upside. Latavius Murray is 33 and a half years old and the RB3 on this team, and Nyheim Hines is now out for the season after a jet ski accident. And this last point on Hines being out for the season is important because it means Cook is going to get all the 3rd down passing work. And Buffalo ranked 8th in pass attempts last year. RBs in similar offenses average a top 15 fantasy finish. So go grab Cook and then this next late round wide receiver. And that would be the veteran Marquez Valdes-Scantling, the almost 29-year-old for the Kansas City Chiefs. Look, you're just getting insane value on MVS right now. He goes outside the top 200 players in fantasy. He's going as the wide receiver 78 in drafts in round 17. This is after guys like 6th round rookie Zach Evans, a running back on the Rams, and even Van Jefferson. And now check out my tweet right here about the other Kansas City receivers. Kadarius Toney, even though he has an injury, he's going in round 8 still. The rookie Rashid Rice goes in round 15, and second-year player Sky Moore goes in round 12. That's fine, but Marquez Valdes-Scantling is going last out of all these dudes in round 17, which is a bit strange because he's the only one on this team that probably has the most secure role as the X receiver on the outside. His only threat is Justin Ross, who, yes, a lot of people are excited about him, but he's a second-year player who didn't really play his rookie year. Last year, MVS was actually reliable for this team in terms of being out there and getting his snaps in. He ran basically 500 routes, 499 to be exact. That was 26th most out of any receiver in the NFL, and he was top 10 in yards per target. Getting deep targets is a cheat code for fantasy. Now, here's a crazy stat I gotta tell you. MVS ranked 57th in catchable targets. 25% of his targets were not catchable. Now, this is strange because right here we're looking at Patrick Mahomes' efficiency metrics. Mahomes was top 5 in true completion percentage and top 10 in deep ball completion percentage, but still somehow MVS had about 20 overthrows last year. The translation here is that MVS was just unlucky last year. Consider him and this next running back. And that would be our number 8 must-have player, Miles Sanders, the new Carolina Panthers RB. Sanders is currently going in either late round 4, early round 5 of fantasy drafts, and if you get him in round 5 as your RB1 even, but RB2, it's a great option. Because everything we're seeing out of Panthers camp is that Sanders is going to be a full 3-down back. You can see his head coach Frank Wright is stating right here, Sanders is a 3-down back for the Panthers and can do a little bit of everything. And then most recently, you can see here it was reiterated in camp because Sanders will be used as a 3-down back this year. This is great news. And this makes sense because Sanders was just paid this offseason by Carolina. As you can see the 2 tweets here, the first one from David Newton, he was paid $25 million, and then as Mike Garafolo points out, $13 million of this was guaranteed, the most of any running back in free agency. And then just a few weeks later, Carolina in the NFL draft backed this up by not taking a running back, which leaves his main competition as Chuba Hubbard, who I think is a talented player, should still earn maybe 6 to 8 touches a game and can be productive if Sanders gets hurt, but he's the RB2 here, and Raheem Blackshear, who last year was inefficient, just 33 career touches. Basically, these guys aren't as good as Miles Sanders. Now, one more thing is that Miles Sanders is reunited with his former running backs coach when he was with the Eagles and Deuce Staley. Sanders was top 10 in yards per touch with Staley and earned a career-high 50 catches as a rookie. So target our number 8 must-have player, Miles Sanders, and then grab this next wide receiver. And believe it or not, that man's name is going to be Gabe Davis, who earlier in the season I wasn't as excited for, but now where he goes in drafts, you gotta get him. Because Davis goes as the 100th overall player. He's going in like round 8 or 9 of fantasy drafts as the wide receiver 42, and he let a lot of people down last year as a sexy fantasy option. Last year, Davis finished as the wide receiver 36 overall, so nothing crazy, but he was normally being taken as like a top 25 receiver, so letting a lot of people down makes him slide down draft boards this year. But we gotta break this down because last year, Davis was dealing with an injury basically the whole year. As you could see right here on September 17, 2022, which is literally week 1 or week 2 of the season, he ends up having an ankle ankle sprain, a high ankle sprain, which should normally take you like maybe a month to recover. Well, he just played through it. And then as John Scott pointed out in training camp, Gabe Davis actually admitted that he did not feel 100% all season. I just feel like I lost a step, was the quote. Now, despite this, Gabe Davis was still being efficient. He was third in yards per catch, still earning targets downfield, seeing about 6 targets per game. And now I think this is a great tweet from Hayden Winks. If you look at just the 11 games when Gabe Davis wasn't on the injury report after his high ankle sprain last year, he would have averaged 10.9 half PPR points, which would have been a top 30 receiver last year. But now he goes, like we said, outside the top 40 wide receivers. So even if he has just another average year like last year when he was healthy, he's going to be a value. But if he pops off, he'll be a massive upside piece for you. And also one more thing is that Josh Allen was playing with a torn elbow last year, an arm elbow tear on November 6th. So he played with this for like the final 6 to 8 weeks of the season, which of course is going to affect his play and then alter all of his wide receivers play. But now Josh Allen and Gabe Davis are healthy, so secure Davis in round 9 and then grab this next guy. And that would be our number 6 must-have player. This will be the best right now handcuff in fantasy football as I record this video, Jerome Ford of the Cleveland Browns. And you can get Jerome Ford as the 166th overall player off the board. That's round 14. He's the running back 58. He's basically free in drafts. But he is going to be a top 10 running back if Nick Chubb misses any time. And now here's what you need to know. Right now, the Browns GM is saying we feel really good about Jerome Ford. He had a strong spring and we think his receiving skills are strong. That is the big one here because maybe he'll even earn some third down work. Another proven point that he's the running back 2 on this team is this first point right here from Underdog's Twitter account. Seeing a lot of Jerome Ford at RB1, don't want to overwork Nick Chubb. So Nick Chubb is sitting out and it's Jerome Ford getting the RB1 touches, not splitting them. And then there's this quote from Nick Chubb himself. He says he's very fast, he's smooth, he is a special player, so even Nick Chubb is identifying it. And this is why the Browns just haven't brought in a veteran like bringing Kareem Hunt back or getting a Dalvin Cook or whoever's on the free agency market because they trust Jerome Ford. And now according to PFF's offensive line rankings, the Browns have the number 2 offensive line this year, up 4 spots from last year, which means like Jerome Ford is going into the best possible spot. And now check this out. Over the last 5 years, the Browns RB2s have averaged 11.5 fantasy points on 10 touches per game, ranking 27th amongst RBs. And I know a lot of people say, oh no, that's all Kareem Hunt. It's not just Kareem Hunt. There's about 10 games in there of games without Kareem Hunt at RB2 and guys like Dearness Johnson playing. Now the interesting part is that those Browns backups average a top 30 fantasy finish, but Jerome Ford, like we said, is going as the running back 58, making him an extreme value. And last year, the Browns took him in the 5th round in the NFL draft, even though they already had 3 running backs under contract, showing how much they liked him. And it's hard not to like him because look, this dude has solid size, and as you can see from Player Profiler's speed score right here, well above average speed. Because in his last year of college as like the main dude for Cincinnati, between his rushing yards of over 1,300, receiving yards of about 200, he had over 1,500 total yards, 20 total touchdowns, and 21 catches is respectable. He's a capable pass catcher. So take him before your buddies do, and now let's get into the top 5 must-have players. And as we get into these spots, make sure you're subscribed to this YouTube channel so you can be updated with all the latest content so you can schmack around your friends in fantasy this year. Our number 5 must-have player is Marquise Hollywood Brown, who right now is a great value because Brown goes as the overall 76th player in fantasy draft, so round 7 right now is the wide receiver 32. And in this same role last year, he averaged 18.3 fantasy points, which was top 5 amongst wide receivers. And DeAndre Hopkins is gone this year, so he'll continue to be the wide receiver 1. And last year, in 8 games without Hopkins there, he averaged 15.4 fantasy points on 9.6 targets per game. This would have finished as a top 12 wide receiver. So a top 12 wide receiver is great news, but as we said, and you can see right here, he goes as the wide receiver 32 right now. All right, here's what you need to know. Brown, over his first 6 games last year when he was actually healthy, he averaged 18.3 fantasy points and 10.7 targets per game. But then as you can see here on October 16th of 2022, he actually fractured his foot and then he missed some time, and even when he returned, he was never 100%. But despite admitting that he wasn't 100% when he returned, look at his targets when he returned. He had 8, 6, 9, 4. He had 8 or more targets in basically like 75% of his games. Now, the reason why he goes a lot later is because his quarterback situation is a question. Right now, it is unrealistic that Kyler Murray is going to be able to return in time for week 1. But as you can see from the doctor on Twitter here, Jeff Mueller, who has been really good at forecasting these injuries for fantasy, he says, well, I have Kyler Murray returning week 5. And yeah, with the rushing upside, he might take a little bit of a hit, not wanting to rush as much off this injury. But week 5 is still pretty good for a passer to get the ball to his wide receiver in Hollywood Brown. Now, if Kyler Murray misses 4 to 6 weeks, Colt McCoy will fill in during that time. And with Colt McCoy, Marquise Brown averages 8 targets per game. So consider Brown a really good value. He should be a 5th round pick, goes in round 7, and then get this next running back. And this is a guy who should be a 1st round running back, but goes in round 2 in Derrick Henry. As you can see right here, Henry goes as the 21st player off the board in the middle of round 2 as the RB8, which is interesting because as you can see right above my head, Henry finished as the 4th overall running back in points per game last year, proved he can stay healthy off a 2021 injury and played 16 games. And over these 16 games, not only did he prove he could stay healthy, well, he led the NFL in carries with 349. That's about 22 or so carries carries per game. And Henry also set a career high in his running back cheat codes. And these more specifically came from his running back receptions. That's one half of the cheat codes, your receptions and red zone usage. Look at this, 33 receptions last year. That was 74% more than his previous career high. And not only was it a career high, but he led all running backs in receiving efficiency. Henry averaged 12 yards per catch in 2022. And one more thing, he's going to remain in an efficient offense with a healthier Ryan Tannehill that's bringing in DeAndre Hopkins. And his main competition is only a third-round pick Tyjae Spears, who I don't think is a terrible fantasy option based off of how late he goes as a handcuff this year, but he's still a third-round rookie. So expect another 350-plus touch season from Derrick Henry, making him a strong option in round 2. Grab him and this next asset. And that asset will be the 2023 Fantasy Blueprint, because if you want to win your fantasy league and smack around your friends this year, take home a championship, well, this is for you. It's going to have all the tools and analysis you need to do just that, like our top 255 player rankings across all positions. You can see here, Hollywood Brown, a player that we talked about, I have him as the 63rd overall player. He goes 77th overall, so I'm 14 spots over around ahead of consensus, meaning he's a great value. Now, it's real simple to get the blueprint this year. You just click the link in the description below or the QR code on the screen and follow the 2 quick and simple steps. And I've tried hard to make this the best value in the industry for you, because right now it's just $5 for the entire season, not just for your draft, but every week during the year you'll be getting tools sent to you as well. And if you don't make your fantasy playoffs for some reason, I'll just refund that $5, making this completely risk-free. So grab your blueprint with the link in the description below or this QR code, and then get this next running back. And that is our number 3 must-have player, Tony Pollard, the new RB1 of the Cowboys. Pollard goes as a similar spot in drafts as Derrick Henry. He's the 22nd overall player. I think he could even be a late first-round pick, but he's going in the later second round. Now, there are some concerns from people about Pollard's injury from last year, because it was a pretty bad injury. On January 22nd last year, he ends up fracturing his fibula, but the good news, and we got some recent news on this, Pollard has already said this in camp. As you can see my tweet right here, he says, "I feel pretty much 100%. And then he went on to say he can play a game if there was one this week. And even more news that supports this is that he was cleared for training camp, so he wasn't put on the PUP list. He's actually allowed to practice. And that's exactly what he's doing. The running back group is going through drills, and new RB1 Tony Pollard is in his first full practice of action since suffering the fibula. If you go down here, you just see Pollard basically running through some of the drills. Now, Dallas is still limiting Pollard. Some practices he doesn't take part in, some drills he doesn't take part in, but that's just to be cautious. He is 100%. And now here's what you need to know about Tony Pollard. He's the 4th most efficient running back in NFL history. And this continued last year because he was top 5 yet again in yards per touch, averaging 5.9 yards every time he touched the ball. And he was the only running back to finish top 5 in rushing efficiency and receiving efficiency last year. Now, of course, this is great news because now he's the clear RB1 with Ezekiel Elliott gone. And check out this tweet I had right here. Tony Pollard, in games where he sees 55+% of the snaps, averages 22.3 fantasy points, which would have ranked number 1 amongst all backs last year. And this year in Dallas, you could expect 60% plus snaps at least, because his current competition isn't threatening by any means. You have Deuce Vaughn there, who may be the RB2 right now, but he is very tiny. If you've seen some of the Twitter videos, like 160 pounds and a 6th-round rookie. And then there's Ronald Jones, who might not make the team. He has just 18 total NFL touches since 2021. And Malik Davis may be pushing Deuce Vaughn for some RB2 work. He looked decent last year in some outings, but nowhere near the talent as Tony Pollard. And even if Dallas adds one of these veteran running backs, you see them re-sign Zeke, you see them bring in, Kareem Hunt, I'm not worried, because it seems like Pollard in his prime right now is the guy. So make sure you get Pollard in this next wide receiver. And that's our number 2 must-have player, Jerry Jeudy, who had a strong finish and just in general had a strong 2022. Now Jeudy goes as the 58th overall player. He's like a 5th or 6th round pick as the wide receiver 24. But the most impressive part about his season last year, he popped off at the end of the year despite dealing with an injury for basically the entire season. You can see it right here. To start the season, he injures his rib, a chest rib sprain on September 18th, and then later on, about mid-season on November 13th, he has an ankle sprain, so he's playing gimpy almost the entire season. But this is what he did when he finally got healthy for weeks 13 to 18. In these 6 games when he was actually healthy, he averaged 18.5 fantasy points on 7.5 targets per game. Jeudy was the number 6 overall receiver to end the year last year, despite playing with a poor QB. Jeudy was 43rd in catchable targets his final 6 games. 25% of the targets weren't catchable. But the good news for this year in Russell Wilson is the Broncos have Sean Payton, an offensive guru, and a new offensive line. So go get Jeudy and this next running back. And this man is our number 1 must-have player as of this recording for 2023. It is the Bengals RB, Joe Mixon. Mixon currently goes in the 4th round of fantasy drafts. He's moved all the way up. He was like a 6th round pick at one point as the running back 16. And at this point where you can get him, he is going to have a massive season for you. Because check this out. Last year, Mixon had his best receiving game usage ever. 60 receptions was 39% more than his previous high. And now his most threatening backup, Samaje Perine, is gone. He's gone from this team and on the Broncos. And that's important because Perine last year was actually top 20 in running back targets. He had 51 targets. And now some of these are going to have to be soaked up from Joe Mixon because there's really no other threatening running backs on this roster that can take the veteran touches that Samaje Perine got last year. You have Trevion Williams, who has just 54 career touches. Chase Brown, a 5th-round rookie. And Chris Evans, just 38 career touches. Nowhere near as trustworthy with these guys as they were with Samaje Perine. And Mixon's overall role, not just his receptions last year, was elite. He was second amongst all running backs, according to PFF, in expected fantasy points, meaning based on his usage, he was expected to finish as the running back 2 last year, only behind Austin Eckler. And as a reminder, he now goes as the running back 16 in round 4 of fantasy drafts, so just take Mixon here. These are the top 10 must-have players for 2023, but if you want to see the 12 players who are overvalued this year in drafts, and you should just drop some hints to your buddies to take them instead, well, check out this video right here. And a final reminder to hit the subscribe button so you can see all the other content that we have coming up in the future so you can indeed win your fantasy championship.